As someone who lived in China their entire life, coming to study at a rural boarding school outside of Pennsylvania was a whole different experience for me. Coming in as a new sophomore, I remember not having many friends for the first few weeks of school. I was very scared, very nervous, and was very skeptical about my decision to come to a study at Mercersburg. I was even too scared to talk to my roommates at some times, and the only few people I would talk to were the other Chinese kids that I met prior from Chinese gatherings or connections. It was not until later on when I finally pushed myself out of my comfort zone to feel comfortable to talk to kids who came from different backgrounds than me. As a senior now, though I made a lot of different friends and I feel safe at Mercersburg, I feel like there are still instances when I feel insecure because of my race and my background. Um, However, I feel like Mercersburg does a great job in creating a safe environment for minorities. I've been to many different camps, summer camps, basketball camps, and in those camps it felt like a totally different experience because as us oftentimes I was one of the only few Asians there, and I remember just getting a lot of racial slurs and being asked like, do you eat dog, or can you keep your eyes open and things like that. Yeah, but Mercersburg has created a really safe environment for us, and there has not been any instances like those. But during the start of the COVID-19 pandemic, when it was just in China around February last year, there were some instances where I felt like I was kind of, I felt really insecure and really low, I guess, like isolated because of my race. So right when the pandemic was starting to spread in China, um, I was really worried about my friends and family back home. And although I was very lucky that I could continue studying because I was studying in the States, I remember going to class some days and hearing people talk about it and them looking at me and then whispering things, and it just really made me feel uncomfortable. And also in previous years, before eating lunch, we would usually hang out downstairs in the student center and put our bags down. And I remember one day just huddling up with my friends who are mostly Asian and just seeing, side eyes or seeing people try to distance themselves and joke around about, COVID, or pretending they're coughing around us and things like that. Like, although they're like really dumb, small jokes, but I still felt very uncomfortable because they were targeting us because we were Asian and generalizing us to people who have the virus, even though we haven't been anywhere near someone who has it. And yeah, most of my friends are really supportive though. Last year during the start of the pandemic was a really hard time for me, but my roommate was very helpful, and also I've talked to my advisor and many teachers, and they've also given me a lot of help.
As a half Asian student, I walk around every day and I feel safe at Mercersburg. I feel more safe than I've ever felt at any school I've been to because Mercersburg creates a safe community where diversity, equity, and inclusion is extremely important. However, it's so hard to tell whether somebody is your ally or somebody that's saying they're ally for the attention of others. Every day I see social media posts or people giving out speeches about how much they care about discrimination towards other people. But then behind closed doors, I'll hear a joke making fun of somebody's appearance or because they're different, because of their race, gender, sexuality, or anything. And it really upsets me because it makes me wonder if this person is discriminating a person for one thing, what else would they discriminate other people for? And it really shows when people's performative activism is used for social media gain or public attention because they want people to think that they're a good person. But those little jokes and comments that lead to other people feeling uncomfortable are what create a community that makes other people feel endangered.
Overall, my experience being Asian at Mercersburg has been really positive. I haven't faced any discrimination or overt racism of any kind, and I genuinely love being here and love the school community. That said, while not necessarily negative or intentional on anyone's part, race is definitely something that I feel acutely here. Coming from a majority Asian school where I was in the mainstream in terms of appearance and my family background, I definitely struggled when I first came into a community where most people were very different from me and looked very different from me. It was honestly intimidating approaching white peers, both because our cultures were so different and it was sometimes difficult finding common ground for conversation, but also because I felt like I was expected to be a certain way because I was Asian, and unconsciously I tried to conform to that. So I was really quiet. I had a close group of friends, but didn't talk to many people beyond that circle. And I didn't get involved in much throughout freshman and into sophomore year. So I didn't really feel racism per se, but being Asian was definitely an insecurity. And now, as a senior, I'm a lot more outgoing and open, and I think this growth came from a few things. Just personally, I've consciously tried to stop caring so much about what others thought of me, including a lot of like Asian stereotypes, and just be more true to myself. It also definitely helped to be involved in the school community, becoming an important part of the dance program, Blue Review, and just actively contributing to Mercersburg. It definitely helped me feel more secure in my place here. Kind of like the idea of who cares about what a few think or expect of me when I have all of these indisputable measures of my value. Lastly, I was really lucky to have found good friends, a lot of people who genuinely like, respect, and care about me, and that's definitely been super important to my experience here. And while that process of growth is really universal to a lot of high schoolers, I think being Asian does compound that a bit. I think it's something that Asian students need to either outspokenly embrace, and sometimes that goes to the extreme, hence making Asian jokes as a self defense mechanism. Or some people reject it by proving that they don't really conform to the common stereotypes. Being Asian in a white community is something I think all Asian students contend with to some degree. It can't really be easily forgotten or overlooked. And it's usually always there in the foreground, at least when you first come. And that's why you see so many Asian, or at least Chinese students, who are really quiet in the larger white dominant school community, but very social and vocal during our Chinese student gatherings. And that's one of those reasons I value those spaces and events so much. And I think these affinity spaces are really nice in that they create an environment where people can truly be themselves and feel comfortable talking without having to constantly worry about how they're projecting their race. I don't have a lot of clear proposals for the school, but I think some of the things that help me break away from the expectations or barriers caused by race could be broadly applicable. The most important thing is probably finding one's own place in the school where you're valued, and whether that's among friends or a club, it's much easier to form these connections in a smaller, intimate group, which is why I think small class sizes, and that's one of the reasons I was a bit hesitant about the freshman English format, because I found it really hard to connect with a lot of my peers because we were in the big group and switching around a lot. Um, but also, maybe a smaller peer group size might help, because I know it was hard to feel comfortable talking in that whole group with a lot of people who are a lot more outgoing, and obviously most people who are white. And also, as I mentioned before, these affinity spaces that the school is starting. And all of these environments really allow one to be known as an individual person rather than just one of the Asian kids. And lastly, I just want to qualify everything I said so far by recognizing that this is just my experience, not the Asian experience. I've had a really good experience, especially compared to a lot of others who have struggled with overt racism compounded with other issues. I want to also say that this is more of the experience of an international Asian student. And so I can adequately answer questions like, where are you really from? Where is your family from? And the Asian American experience is very different, as oftentimes their identities as American are also often questioned.